Hello everyone, welcome to our inaugural episode of our podcast channel, Our Journey to Net Zero. Danfoss believes in engineering a better tomorrow and has been a brand founded on the tenets of energy efficiency and sustainability. Our podcast channel is an attempt to capture the insights, opinions, views, and suggestions from industry stalwarts, influencers, decision makers, and last but not the least, anyone and everyone to whom a sustainable future matters. On this note, allow me to welcome our very first guest, and it's none other than Mr. Ravichandran, President Danfoss India. A very good morning to you, Ravi, and it is my pleasure to have you for this inaugural episode of our podcast channel, Our Journey to Net Zero.
Thank you, Vivek, for inviting me for this pretty interesting topic.
If in case you could share your views on our current urban landscape, the underpinnings of sustainability supporting them, and more importantly, the direction and pace at which the Indian cities are growing.
When you look around in the world, I think we clearly are challenged on several strategic dimensions. While we have laid out clearly a sustainable development goals in front of us, what we want to achieve by 2030 from a United Nations perspective, of course, today we use different connotations in the economy, like, we want to be more sustainable. We want to be using technologies that are climate friendly. We want to make sure that we leave a better universe for our next generation. And when you look at India, we are still yet to build 2/3 of India. And therefore, the way we have gone about building India in the last 50 years needs to be redesigned or reimagined for the next 30-40 years. I think from a company perspective, sustainability is the core of our company. It's the DNA of our company. And it is something that has been intrinsically embedded in the business of the company. The technologies that we have done over the last 80, 90 years, all of them have actually helped our customers to do more with less.
Thank you so much for setting the context on sustainability, Ravi. And that exactly leads me to my second question. So, Ravi, we are all looking at an India that is expected to be home to 41 cities by 2030, with 10 million people each in each of these cities. Though it is definitely an indication of a growing economy, what challenges do you foresee when these cities come up in future?
So firstly, I think, India is a continent of 30 states and it's a lot more complex than we can think of. We also need to recognize that cities account for almost 85% of the GDP. More than half the population of India is also living in the cities. And I think by 2030, 2050, you will see that urbanization is going to become bigger and kind of deeply penetrated into the rural India. I remember this quote from our founding father, Mahatma Gandhi. He said that, India lives in its villages. But this paradigm has completely changed over the last 40, 50 years. Of course, cities generate more growth. It creates more jobs. But at the same time, we also need to make sure that we need to keep the cities sustainable as they grow and as they create more jobs in terms of reducing greenhouse emissions. We also need to improve the indoor air quality and also improve the health of the population. So I think in this context, we need to look at how do we decouple energy and the development of a city, and at the same time make sure that we also are doing the right things so that the cities don't become warmer.
India aims to become net zero by 2050. But it is also a fact that it is expected to witness a massive surge in its energy demand. How, according to you, can India achieve its sustainability goals despite these challenges?
If India needs to look at becoming a nation net zero by 2050, we kind of need to reimagine that journey and provide the right direction and the impetus towards that goal. In my view, we have 4 large fundamental challenges. Our biggest challenge is energy access for all. Still 200 to 300 million people do not have trouble-free electricity 24/7. So energy access is a very, very important element in achieving energy independence in India. Even though we have celebrated recently the 75 years of independence, we still haven't got energy independent as a nation. Second important thing that I think we need to think about is that the energy transition. When you look at the first 30 years of India's independence, hydropower was contributing to almost 25% of the basket of the energy. But over the last 50 years in its journey, we have actually started only to use more and more of oil for transportation and more coal for electricity. And fundamentally, both coal and oil have left a very challenging environmental impact, and which is leading to climate change and several other things actually. So this energy transition by reducing dependence on coal and oil is going to be one of the impediments for us to get to the net zero. Traditionally, India is a very complex nation. We have multiple climatic zones. Power has been distributed across from a generating point to a consumption point. There are kilometers of transmission lines. So, in our journey to 2050, I truly believe we need to fix these three challenges: energy access, energy transition, and a smarter grid, actually. All of us are aware that the sustainable development goals is kind of a guiding star for us for 2030. But given the fact that the COP26 is on the anvil, a lot more governments are taking much tougher actions on fighting climate change. If at all India wants to become net zero by 2050, it is our moment now. And I truly believe that if we can actually use the success that we have got out of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency by labeling programs and really penetrate energy efficiency, which actually is the first fuel, coupled with energy storage, electrification, and by 2050, surely we have a great opportunity to even switch off our oil and coal sectors. So this cocktail of energy efficiency, electrification, and deep digital decarbonization actually is going to help India get to what we call as the net zero by 2050 ambition of India.
Ravi, on the similar note, while India does aim to become net zero by 2050, do you feel, and what are your views on how sensitive are we towards the need for sustainability, the concept of sustainability from a societal perspective? Are we really conscious and sensitive towards it?
Well, I think we have as a nation started to understand what sustainability is all about. I think our bigger challenge is to penetrate this down to the bottom of the pyramid. I think most of us who are probably in the urban cities understand why sustainability is very important for the future of this planet. We have about 600 million people in India living on the farm sector. And this is another big sector where sustainability is simply not understood. There is a very strong nexus between food, energy, and water. So the question is, how do you envision the future of India by 2050 that dovetails what we do in the farm sector along with what do we do in the urban cities? And how do you bring this change through people? I think our challenge really has not been that we don't have the right framework or a regulatory mechanism for sustainability. If I look around what we've done in the last 2 decades, we've done remarkable progress in terms of the Energy Efficiency Act, the way Bureau of Energy Efficiency has come up with the PAT schemes. But I think what is more important is that how do you reach this to the entire 1.2 billion people and ask them, why is this more important? How do we get there by 2050 and what do we do differently? So I would say leadership and mindset are two very important elements if we need to get to this goal of net zero by 2050.
Ravi, coming to a very critical aspect of sustainability, especially when you look at it from an urban ecosystem, and that is technology. And especially being the face of Danfoss India, who better to ask this question too. How have you seen technology playing a role in making the urban ecosystem better every passing day?
I truly believe technology is a resource liberating force. When I look around this urban sustainability challenge in front of us, actually the opportunity is extremely interesting for a couple of reasons. One, it is not that we don't have technology to do the right things to make our urban cities more sustainable, but what we miss is really the right business models, the cost of finance, the skills. I think these are three important things that is challenging us in terms of adoption of technologies. Firstly, we do a lot of design to make the most energy efficient products. But the fact is, when you apply these products in real life, you need the right skills, you need the right designing principles. If you take the Indian context of urban cities, variable speed chillers, which is a very important part of buildings, the penetration so far is only about 20 to 30%. But I don't see a reason why all chillers should not be used. Maybe we are waiting for a regulatory mechanism to push us to use chillers which are variable speed. The point I'm trying to make here is technology has all there. What we have not seen is the increased penetration of the technology in order to make the urban infrastructure more sustainable. And my own analysis, when I look at some of the strategic challenges ahead of us, is the skill, which is how do you design, how do you apply. Second is the cost of capital, because many of these technologies, it has a higher first time cost, but it has a lower life cycle cost. And when we make decisions in the buying process, we put a lot of emphasis on first time cost rather than on the life cycle cost. So we actually need to look at, from a mindset change also, how do we make decisions in daily life.
Ravi, along similar lines, I would like to kind of take the question a little further. You've seen how buildings have evolved. If you could kind of comment on a couple of specific technology evolutions that you foresee in the times to come.
When you take a chiller as an example, today you have oil free technology as an emerging technology. And given the fact that the energy productivity of oil free technology for chilling applications is very compelling, we clearly have seen this having a higher penetration. If you want to use this oil free technology, you don't have oil being used as a lubricant. So clearly, that also adds to the sustainability dimension. All pervasive opportunity exists in front of us using digital to really keep the 24/7 uptime of the chillers. So I think there's a lot of functionalities that it offers when it comes to buildings. But unless we really deploy these technologies, we are not going to really change the energy envelope of a building. We all need to understand, when you design a building, you design with certain design assumptions. But when you operate the building, the assumptions are completely different. And then when you actually use the building every day, even the assumptions that capacity utilization of the buildings keep varying actually. So maintaining and managing a building and the art and science of disrupting the energy envelope is a journey.
The Acryx Hall of Fame, a platform, a recognition that Danfoss instituted in association with ISHRE. How have you, over the last 5 years, seen the kind of buildings that got nominated evolve?
We have partnered with ISHRE and we have run this campaign called the Acryx Hall of Fame. This is a great platform where we look at iconic buildings which are designed and operating with at least 24 months of actual data of the building and use that data to benchmark different technologies. We take annually buildings, we benchmark them, we have a jury that goes in and inspect these buildings, and then the best energy efficient building is given an award and inducted into the Acryx Hall of Fame. I think we have so far got 5 iconic buildings into this. There is always a belief that iconic buildings always exist outside India. But what Acryx Hall of Fame has showed us is that India has actually world-class buildings. And if I look at all the winners of the buildings and even those buildings which were not winners but very close winners or number 2 or number 3, all of these buildings has done remarkably very well actually. So these iconic buildings are truly an inspiration for a lot more newer buildings that needs to be built. So very clearly, events like this really has helped not just Danfoss, but I think also the multiple stakeholders. the architects, the designers, the technology providers, the end users who use the building, the companies that are maintaining these buildings. All of these stakeholders are coming on this platform and looking at how can they make their buildings more efficient.
As we approach towards the end of this conversation, I would like you to kind of share a message or a thought that you'd like to leave our audience with.
I think India is in a cusp of transformation, and I truly believe getting to net zero by 2050 is really a radical vision. And I truly consider it radical because this can actually help us to get to sustainability. And in my view, we can do it. We have the human capital with us, we have the technologies with us, and what it takes for us to deliver is a very strong leadership. And I truly believe when we look back at the next 30, 40 years, we should be very proud of what we have achieved in terms of sustainability.
Thank you so much once again, Ravi, for getting the ball rolling for this podcast channel. It has been a pleasure to have you here on this channel. And to all my fellow stakeholders from the commercial building fraternity, we are hosting our next edition of the Acryx Hall of Fame on the 18th Feb 2022. And this time, we are inviting nominations from data centers, hospitals, and the pharmaceutical sector. We look forward to receiving your nominations, and we hope you do make it to our Hall of Fame. On this note, thank you so much, and until next time.